Hi everyone, welcome to today's session in which we will be discussing reading instruction. As always, I'm leaving you over here the reference book where I took this information from. So, reading instruction, as you know, Mexico is one country that is not actually very fond of reading, right? Most Mexicans read very little through their whole life, and it's really important for us because since we are Mexicans living in Mexico and we are trying to teach another language, in this case English, it's really important to know where we are standing, which is our context, but also what kind of strategies we can use so we can have a more successful teaching when we are teaching English, but especially focusing on reading. This skill it's very important, and through this presentation, you will see why. Not only because it's very useful for us as a culture, but also because it's the most important skill, and we will see why during this whole presentation. So, welcome everyone. Now, we are going to start with a very small introduction, but very necessary. Well, not so small though. It's a little bit it's very complete actually, but it's very necessary. The first thing is that, as you know, we have a bunch of people who have been researching on second language teaching during the years, and they have found the foundations and complexities of reading. So far, we've been checking, like, for example, how to teach speaking, some ideas, some very important information to know, for example. But when it comes to reading, it's actually very understand that we see how significant the role of vocabulary is for success in learning in general, not only learning how to read in another language, but for learning, you see. Another thing that we must be paying attention to is the role of strategies. As teachers, we must be providing students with the right strategies so they can be more successful when they are reading, for example. Another thing is to focus our attention on the importance of appropriate assessments. Remember, the assessment is equal to evaluation. Now, please, every time you hear the word assessment, think of evaluation. The importance of appropriate assessments to measure growth and development in readers. It's not only about if they are understanding or not the texts that we are providing them, but it's actually about measuring the development on their reading skills. And finally, the central role that reading plays in academic success. And as I was telling you, I'm going to be discussing this during this whole presentation. Now, reading it's more than any other skill because it provides the foundation for success in language learning and academic learning. In 2007, Janssen observed that reading is critical to the academic achievement of second language learners. Um, they said that good readers, they all present one of these four characteristics. And when we are thinking about practicing reading skill in our English classes, it's really important that we are aiming that our students can achieve these four characteristics. I mean, it's not easy to achieve all of them, or it's not actually possible that they can achieve the four of them during one English course, for example. But through time, we should be focusing to take them to achieve these four characteristics. Now, good readers, according to Jansen, can combine information from a text and their own background knowledge to build meaning. Remember when we were discussing meaningful learning, meaningful teaching? Same thing, right? Combine information from a text that they are reading, connect that information with their own background knowledge, so they start building meaning, right? That's very true. Good readers have a higher success in writing when they have a solid knowledge base. When we are interested to combine, for example, reading with writing, it's very important that before making our students write anything, the first thing is that they need to have a very solid base on actually reading, for example, because reading combines all the skills. We will talk about this a little bit later. Good readers have fundamental skills to listen to someone talk about a topic when they have read about and understand successfully. Like, for example, if they are listening to a TED talk, for example, and it's about a topic they read before in the past, it's actually more obvious that they are going to understand more easily, more successfully, because it's a topic that they have read about in the past. So you see the importance on giving them, providing them with the correct input when they are reading. And finally, good readers can perform successfully in speaking tasks when they have gained input through reading. Um, in the past, we have discussed about certain speaking strategies, and one thing that we said is that for students to be able to speak, to perform in another language, in this case, like orally, when they are speaking, it's really important that they have a very solid knowledge base of the language, right? So basically, to know good grammar, to have good vocabulary, to be able to pronounce words correctly, but also to be able to activate the cognitive characteristics to be able to speak at the moment, but also understand whatever another person is telling them, right? So, if we try to link speaking with reading, for example, it's a very good thing to think about, like trying to link reading with speaking, because just like writing, if students have read about any topic and you ask them to give you an opinion about any topic, and this topic happens to be one that they have read from, they are going to be able to perform the speaking task that you are asking them to, in this case, to give an opinion, you know? So basically, as you can see, we are mixing on all the skills. If we think about the importance on reading, it's actually one of the most important skills, right? So in this presentation, we will focus on the pedagogy and practice of developing effective reading instruction in order to strengthen language learners in the long and challenging task of language acquisition, and using the language skills they have developed to increase their content knowledge in other areas. When we say to increase their content knowledge in other areas, remember when we discussed the holistic process of learning another language? It's not only important to focus on English culture, you know, it's also important and necessary to focus on different cultures, different ways to understand life. So when you are providing the students with the input that is necessary for them, that is no not necessary, with input that you think that it's going to be important or interesting for them, you what you are doing as a teacher is that you are providing them with different resources so they can increase their content knowledge, not only in English but in their whole life. So it's really important to obtain good input, to plan to give students good input. Now, what about the background? Teachers can ensure that there are meaningful connections among the learners, the reading, and the development of the other language skills, as we've been saying, right? Teachers can view reading as the core language skill for instruction and then to build up the development of all language skills around effective reading instruction. So basically, if you think about it, we can place reading in the middle of all the language skills, but also everything that is part of language. Remember, when we try to understand what language is, we have, for example, the four skills: reading, writing, speaking, and listening. But also, besides these four skills, we have grammar, vocabulary, and we also have phonetics. But also, one very important element that I've been trying to push and that I've been pushing to you, that I've been trying to give a very important role is culture, right? All the pragmatic information that surrounds language. So if you think about it, all of this is part of language, but reading is at the core of all these skills and all these parts of language because it contains all, and you will see why. In 2004, Harmer indicates that one reason why students do not like writing in their second language is because they think they do not have anything meaningful to write about. Like, for example, um, if you think about it, when we are teaching a language, uh, we have discussed this before, the importance on mixing skills, right? Not only focusing on one skill, like for example, I'm today's class is going to be writing, so let's write an email, inviting a friend to a party that we are organizing, right? No, I mean, um, one thing that we are always advising to future teachers is to combine at least two skills. Like, for example, if your main interest is that students write, for example, well, make them read also. Make them read before they write. So they have something, they have some ideas, they can think about different aspects of the topic that they are reading about. So from that kind of activity, like reading different texts about different topics, they can feel more confident. They can also feel more ready to be able to start writing about anything. You are giving them a tremendous help, and this kind of help is going to make them feel more confident, as I was telling you, more comfortable with writing, and also they will have ideas because um, you are interested in languages. Of course, you are going to become teachers eventually, but not all people are interested in language per se, books, or yeah, books mostly. So, articles, yeah, anything that contains language, right? So, um, basically, most people obtain their information like from TV series, movies, TV programs, etc. So, this kind of information sometimes is not so, let's say, serious, right? So if you want to lead them into actually being able to write something that is not only meaningful for them or necessary for them as language students, but if you think about it, you're also making them or you're opening, um, you're opening a world to them because you are introducing them to obtaining information from a different way, like articles, magazines, books. It's not that cinema, for example, cannot provide us with good information input, but actually it's like presenting students with different resources so they choose the one that is more appropriate for the task that you are asking them to do. So this is the thing, just like introducing students to new worlds, to new ways to look for information. find information, etc. When reading, when reading is placed at the core of instruction, it serves as a springboard into writing by providing students with something meaningful to write about based on what they have read, as I was telling you. So this is the idea, right? You have reading at the core of all the language skills or language per se. Then everything can, what's the word? Everything can, after giving or providing students with reading materials, then they can start writing about something, probably a topic they read about in the past, and they are going to write using the proper vocabulary and grammar that you have also taught them. And then the next step would be speaking about something they read or something they wrote, which previously they read, or they can listen to different materials about something they previously read or something they previously wrote about. So you see why it is in the core of all the skills and in the core of all the language. Also, if you think about it, students, well, we were mentioning in the introduction that Mexicans is not a society that we are very into reading because of our educational background, because our society, how we were raised, how we were taught, etc., etc. But we can change this. Think about it. Imagine you have the opportunity to teach English to a bunch of students. It doesn't matter the ages as long as they are not children. Um, you can introduce them into reading, into looking for books they like, genres they enjoy, and through reading, they can not only practice the language you are teaching, but they are also going to learn new vocabulary, learn new grammar structures. They are going to learn about new topics that are interesting for them. And they can learn about the culture, as we were mentioning a little bit earlier. So, a book provides like many opportunities for students to grow in the language they are learning. And this is amazing because reading in another language, it's not only about being able to understand words, it's not only to understand the grammar or practice, I don't know, your knowledges, but it's also about meeting new ways to interpret the world, to understand the world. They can actually travel, right? They can travel to different countries, they can meet new people through characters. It's a cognitive activity that is necessary for humans so they can develop, and more than developing, to become better readers and become more humans. Okay, let's continue. Now, what are some of the key issues in reading? Well, um, we have divided these key issues into two main areas. The first one is reading comprehension instruction, and the second one has to do with motivation. So, of course, we are going to start with reading comprehension instruction. There is one major concern that consists of giving students short reading passages followed by vocabulary and comprehension activities. These comprehension activities are mainly tests. You know, when we were discussing how we provide students with certain activities, but what we are actually doing, more than making sure they understand, we are actually trying to see if they understood through different evaluation activities. So in this case, this is a big concern. Experts don't want teachers to keep focusing only on vocabulary activities and comprehension activities, because reading is more than that. So the question is, if we are only focusing on reading passages or small passages, when do we actually teach learners how to be better readers and engage in appropriate comprehension strategies? How to be better readers. Ha! Sounds very complicated if you think about it. Um, Becoming better readers, it's not only, I know I might sound a little crazy, but one of the things that I enjoy about teaching languages is that sometimes languages pass to a second degree of importance in the class, and you will start focusing more on characteristics about humans. Like, for example, who doesn't want to be a better reader? I mean, you are university students, and I think you are interested in becoming better readers, right? Why? Well, because you are reading all the time, you have subjects of literature, because for your classes, you have to read certain texts, for example. Now, for students, it's really clear that you must become better readers, but for normal people, like, why should they become better readers? As we were saying, because books or literature in general provides them with, books are like windows that they can open to see different worlds, right? Different perspectives, different humans, different cultures, different ways to understand life, as I was telling before. So we want our students to become better readers, but not only for our English class, but for the future, for their future in their jobs, for their future as a person, etc. And how can we make them, or how can we make them understand that they have to engage in appropriate comprehension strategies? When we say comprehension strategies, is that all the strategies that we can use so we understand better whatever we are reading, right? So this theorist in 2006, I'm not going to pronounce the last name because I cannot, but this theorist in 2006 provided a resource to equip teachers with the tools they need to provide effective reading comprehension instruction. So he wrote a book where he basically um, guides, no, not guides, invites teachers to implement 26 different comprehension strategies categorized into 7 groups. And these are questioning, summarizing, text structure, prior knowledge, comprehension monitoring, question answering, and multi-strategy instruction. A little parenthesis over here. For example, during this pandemic, some teachers, I'm going to include myself into this example, um, it's not only about providing students with one reading and then ask them to answer some questions just to check if they understood the content, because we would be going back just to the beginning of this presentation, which is a big concern. We are only focusing on evaluating if they understood or not. But more than that, we should be focusing on what we can do to improve the reading comprehension. Okay, so it's not only about giving them a text and then giving them some questions to answer, but it's about making them, or no, not making them, like asking them to answer different kinds of activities, you know. So just as you heard over here, we have questions, we have summaries, we have comprehension, questions, answering, etc. So we have different ideas that we can use more than answer these questions or make a summary, you know. So this theorist, well, this writer, actually in these strategies, he presents one that is called developing thin and thick questions, which I think it's going to sound very familiar to you once I explain it, because I'm sure that in your language classes you have been part of one of these kind of activities, for example. So, for example, you give them a text, let's say an article, a magazine article about recycling, right? A magazine article about recycling. So basically, after they are done reading, you are going, as a teacher, you are going to have an activity with them, where you are going to write on the board what he calls thin questions. The first thing is that you have to start with thin questions. So basically, thin questions are questions that can be answered with the text. So, for example, what is the text about? Recycling, right? Because it's on the text. What are some ideas that the text provides about recycling? So they go back to the text, the students go back to the text, and they can answer the question, right? So you write the questions on the board, right? So you make some sort of a T, a T like this, and on the left you write the thin questions. So you write, I don't know, 3, 5, 7 questions that whose answers can be found on the text, and you start asking them one by one. They can answer. You can have conversations with them, like if they gave you the complete answer, or if they found something interesting on that answer, for example, etc., etc. And then on the right, remember that we have a T. On the left, we have the thin questions, and on the right, we have the thick questions. The thick questions are questions whose answers are not on the text. Those answers are basically, well, it's about information students can think about based on the text. For example, what strategies do you implement at home about recycling? Or do you recycle at home? What materials do you recycle? What do you do, for example? So all those questions are questions that, as I told you, the answers are not on the text, and therefore we don't have correct or incorrect answers. We just have answers, which are thoughts and ideas from students based on the topic of the reading, in this case the article magazine, right? So you have your questions which are presented on the board. You are having a discussion with students. And if you think about it, this activity, the developing thin and thick questions, you are mixing two abilities. You are mixing reading, and then you are asking students to speak, right? And then you can have some sort of an activity which would be writing as a homework, to look for different strategies that countries use to recycle, for example, you know? These are just some ideas. Okay. Well, actually, if you are interested in this book, which presents the 26 different comprehension strategies, you can look for this writer. He wrote this book in 2006. So I would invite you to go on the internet and look for more information. So basically, regardless of the reading materials that are used in the classroom, explicit reading comprehension instruction should be provided for readers to be better comprehenders and know how to demonstrate their comprehension. It's not about the material. I'm sure that you will choose the right material. Remember that the material goes according to a student's needs, a student's ages, a student's interests, etc., etc. But more than that, we should be very explicitly, which means very openly, focusing on providing students the correct reading strategies so they become better readers. And at the same time, more than good readers demonstrate how much they comprehend on the text that we present them. The next key issue, as I was anticipating you, has to do with motivation. We have this, what is this called? This formula. We have this formula that says motivation equals expectation of reward on effort required. What? I'm going to explain this a little bit later. Let's start. Motivation, for the past 50 years, motivation has been part of language research, on second language research. It was actually Gardner and Lambert who first published their initial studies in motivation in Canada. It was in 1959. So since then, researchers have proposed various models of motivation and gathered the greatest portion of that research occurring within the past 20 years. Motivation is a topic that I'm very interested on. For me, motivation is the most important thing in a language classroom. We can have the best infrastructure, we can have the best books, we can have the best teacher, we can have the best school located in the best neighborhood, we can have everything. But if we don't have motivation, if students are not motivated, if teachers are not motivated, we don't have anything, you know? So motivation, it's a topic that really interests me. And I've been doing some research myself. I've been doing some extra readings myself because it's something that more than focusing on the skills, motivation, it's like the base of everything. So the question is, whose responsibility is it to motivate students? Actually, it's no one's responsibility. They say that students should come motivated to our classrooms. And so teachers should come already motivated to the classrooms. And that's it, right? We have motivated students, we have motivated teachers, and well, it happens. Well, not really. According to Dornier in 2001, he indicated that it is every teacher's responsibility to motivate students. And I completely agree. Now, in 1956, this theorist provided a simple and yet practical definition about motivation. And it's this formula that I presented to you in the beginning. Motivation equals expectation of reward and effort required. What? So basically, they are asking us to increase the numerator. The numerator is over here on the top. So basically, increase the expectation of reward. Remember that students come to our classrooms expecting to be rewarded. How can we reward them? Well, the most common way to reward students is with a piece of candy, which I wouldn't recommend, by the way, especially if you are working with children, because children go crazy with sugar. So I wouldn't recommend it. Don't apply this, please. Well, one thing that is very common is to offer extra points on the next partial, extra points on homeworks, extra points in any part of the school, right? So when they come to our class and we ask them, or no, not ask them, if we present them with an activity, they are expecting to obtain a reward. Even if it's just a game, they are expecting to win. And that's it. I mean, they don't have to obtain anything because the most important thing for them is winning. And they can be in a game individually, or they can be in pairs, or they can be in groups. But also, I'm more, a less obvious reward that everyone has when they come to a language class. It's to actually learn the language and to be able to produce the language. So this is the thing that students have every single time in their minds, a reward, something that they can obtain and they will be happy about it. So basically, they are asking us to increase the expectation of reward and decrease the expectation of effort required, because what happens if we tell them, yes, if you want to speak English, you need to invert many hours of your life in order to be able to speak the language? Well, that's true, I know, yes, I agree. However, decrease the expectation of effort required, which means, yes, it's clear and it's necessary that you tell them this, but you can use different words, and through different activities they can figure it out that they have to invert many hours of study, many hours of concentration, many hours besides being in the class, so etc., etc. So basically, teachers must identify motivational strategies that can be implemented in order to achieve the goals of this motivational formula. So it's going to depend on the skill, it's going to depend on the activity, it's going to depend on many things. Like, for example, now that we are talking about reading, let's suppose that you are working with a B2 group and you are asking them to read a novel, okay? Obviously, when a student hear that they are going to read a novel, the effort, which is a denominator, it's going to be on the top. They are going to be freaking out because it's a novel and it's a very big project for them, probably because they are not used to reading and because they don't like reading, because in our educational system it's not an activity that we ask students to do. It's not common. So they are going to be freaking out. No, wait, you're not going to ask them to read a novel, a 500-page novel, right? You are going to ask them first to start with some passages, very small passages, so the effort that they see it's decrease. And the expectation is that they are going to start acquiring more reading strategies. They are going to become better readers little by little because they are going to see that they understand. They understand more little by little. You increase the number of words in the passages. So if you start with one passage that is like this, you increase it until you make it one page, and then you increase it more and it becomes 2 pages, 3 pages, 5 pages, 10 pages, and then probably short stories. So you go little by little by little by little so you can increase, and they don't see that they have to effort too much. Okay, Now, one another thing about motivation is that we have this theorist, this reader. And when I say this, it's because it's the writer. We have Zoltan Dornier, which is the most prolific L2 motivation research currently. And I would invite you to go on the internet and look for some articles that he has published about motivation. He has many very interesting proposals. He has done lots of research, and all the ideas that he presents are very interesting for you, for your future teaching practice. Well, he basically developed a framework of motivational teaching consisting in only four elements, which sounds very easy. However, it's not. The first one is as a teacher, you have to create the basic motivational conditions. Huh. Create the basic motivational conditions? Well, basically, making sure that your students are comfortable, making sure that you know their names, making sure that you include them all when you are doing activities, making sure that you provide them with the right materials that are interesting for them. I mean, we could spend hours and hours about talking about this first point, creating the basic motivational conditions. This is why I'm asking you to go and look for his papers so you can learn more about his proposals. The second one is generating initial motivation. The third one, maintaining and protecting motivation. Once you create motivation, now you maintain it, you protect it, because if you let it go, then you have to go back to the first point, you know? And the last one, encourage positive retrospective self-evaluation. For him, self-evaluation is really important. Please go on the internet and look for this. We can finish motivation with this. Teachers um, can implement strategies to increase the expected rewards of reading and to decrease the expected effort during reading, just as I was telling you. Of course, motivation it's cannot only be applied on reading. It can be applied on writing, on speaking, on any skill or any activity that you do in the classroom. Actually, it should be included in every activity in your class. But this is just an idea of applying motivation to your reading classes. The motivational teacher is one who seamlessly moves between effective reading instruction but also motivational moments. Again, not only about reading. I would say the motivational teacher is one who seamlessly moves between effective instruction, effective language instruction, and motivational moments. Conclusions. Let's see. The learning cultures of our educational institutions can be changed with a D if learners engage in more meaning reading. Remember that creating meaningful activities is the basis, you know. If you bring meaningful input for your students, they are going to receive it correctly. Sometimes the students cannot be as motivated as we want, but by providing them with the correct materials and input, they can involve, they can engage into the activity, and learning can happen. Gradual change. We must implement a gradual change if teachers focus students' attention on the value of reading and how reading can help them be better prepared to speak, listening, writing, but also using appropriate vocabulary and learning grammar with well-written passages designed for reading instruction. So this is why choosing the right material is necessary for you guys. You future teachers, focus a lot, pay a lot of attention on the materials that you are going to use, because based on that, text that you are going to present to your students, they can develop better strategies for speaking, listening, writing, vocabulary, and grammar. And there are no future trends. The future trends have to do with incorporating into our instructional repertoire all we know about reading, everything that we discussed in this presentation. So, as you can see, I think that it's really important that you understand how necessary it is for you to implement these strategies, to implement this motivational framework, and to start working on choosing the right material so you can lead your students to better comprehension, better learning, and better success, and no, not better, like more success in their own language learning. Thank you so much for listening to me. I hope that everything was clear. Make sure that you write questions if you have some of them. You can email me. And well, that was it. Thank you so much for your attention. See you soon.